Welcome to this quick intro to the 8th edition of MLA, brought to you by Appalachian State University's Writing Across the Curriculum program. MLA is based on 5 principles of documentation. These are, 1, that text can be a variety of things. They're not all print-based. For instance, they might include performances, works of art, movies, TV shows, and lots of other things. Texts are fluid and mobile, meaning they're not always going to be found in the same place or even in the same medium. Texts have things in common, and those things that are in common are what allow us to document them in the first place. This follows into number 4, that there is more than one acceptable way to document a source, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the citation format. And lastly, we use documentation in MLA to trace the steps of our work so that fellow scholars and researchers can follow what we've done and find the same source material and understand how we've interpreted it through our own work. So this is the secret recipe, if you will, for citing work in MLA style. They've tried to make it simple, and in some ways making it simple has made it complex, but that's because there are so many options. You'll notice it follows 1 through 9 in order, and this picture is shown throughout the presentation. There are also 2 places for optional elements, which we'll talk about as we move through the presentation. The first part is the author. In MLA, we use first and last names. The first time you state an author's name in your citation format, if it's only one author, it's last name, comma, and then first name. If it's 2 authors, the first author is listed last name, comma, first name, comma, the word and then the second author is listed first name and last name with a period after it. If there are more than 2 authors, the first author is listed as last name, comma, first name, comma, et al. With a period after it. Et al. Is a shortening of the Latin phrase for and others, and it allows people reading your citation to know that there are other authors. However, it's also worth noting that sometimes we mean something else when we use the word author. Sometimes an author is a creator. For instance, in this example, David Lynch and Mark Frost wrote the show The Twin Peaks: The Return. Also, you might list a performance, as in Laura Dern's performance in Twin Peaks: The Return. An author could also be an organization or an association or a government entity. For instance, the Bureau of Labor Statistics could be an author if you're using statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. When we get to the title of your source, you use the title case, which means you capitalize everything except for articles, prepositions, conjunctions, and the word to in an infinitive. An infinitive is the verb form, so to write or to think. Conjunctions are those words that combine 2 sentences, like and, or, nor, for, yet. You do capitalize all of the above exceptions if they are, and only if they are, the first word of the title, the last word of the title, or the first word after a colon or other piece of punctuation. You do capitalize the word is, even though it's a short word, and you do capitalize the word the, which is an article, if you're speaking about the title of a publisher, such as the New York Times or the Washington Post. MLA uses something called containers. The concept of containers is crucial because when the source being documented forms part of a larger whole, the larger whole can be thought of as a container that holds the source. We've listed some examples here. For instance, if you download an ebook from Amazon, Amazon is not the container. Instead, the title of the work is the title of the ebook, and the container is the publisher, the same as if you had found the work in the library. However, if you're citing a customer review from Amazon, maybe it's about the book that you read, the customer review is published on the site, and therefore the site constitutes a container. Similarly, if you're using As You Learn or Blackboard, if it links you out to another website, that website counts as the container. But if you're using a professor's lecture or a comment that another student made in a forum, then Blackboard or As You Learn would count as the container. Other contributors These might be in addition to or other than the author. They might include editors, translators, narrators, performers, as we saw in the Laura Dern example earlier. We've listed the most common types here. If you have multiple other contributors, this is one of the places where you can use the optional elements slot, number 1. So you'd have the author and then the title of the container, which is used if the work is contained within another work. For example, here we've listed Antigone, which was written by Sophocles, so that's the original author, but it was translated by Sir Richard Jebb. It's contained within the work titled The Complete Plays, and that was edited by Moses Hadas, published by Bantam Classics. Notice that in this case, the other contributor comes directly after the work they contributed to. For instance, Antigone was translated by Sir Richard Jebb. The Complete Plays were not. The Complete Plays were edited by Moses Hadas. Next, we move to the version. You won't always need the version in the same way you won't always need the title of a container. A book only contains itself, for instance, while a chapter of a book is contained inside the book. If you're using a specific version, this is where you list it. Next, we move to number. This will be most commonly used if you're citing articles that come with volume and issue numbers, and those are most often scholarly articles. Note the example at the bottom where you say vol, V-O-L period, followed by the volume number, comma, N-O period, which stands for number, and then the number, the issue number of the volume, and that's followed by a comma and the date and the page numbers. You might also use number to indicate a season number or an episode number. Location could include a lot of different things. If you're using a scholarly article, it might be the page numbers on which the scholarly article is found. If you're using a chapter from a book, it might be the page numbers of that chapter in that book. If you're using an online resource, it might include the URL or the DOI. It could also include a disk number of a DVD set or a physical location if you're working in archives. Finally, there are a few other weedy things that you might need to think about. These are the things that MLA used to require and no longer does. For instance, you don't need to put N period, D period for no date if there's no date. You no longer need to include the medium of publication or the date that an electronic source was accessed. If you have additional questions about how to use MLA, we recommend that you visit the Writing Center's website at writingcenter.appstate.edu/handouts. The Writing Center offers a variety of handouts that can help you with your MLA style. If you click on Documentation under the list of types of handouts, you'll see a variety. We have APA, Chicago Manual of Style, MLA, and more. Under MLA, you'll notice we provide information about MLA format and documentation, an MLA sample paper, and even an MLA template to help you if you need to style your paper according to MLA style. Now, go forth and complete your MLA style citations with confidence.